haunts me every time my alarm goes off.
Depends on the sport a little bit, but
I need to worry they're bad at what I teach.
So excited to hit this workout.
I'm so glad my parents never let me.
You're listening to the Live, Live, Play podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to the Live, Live, Play podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Kinsler, and today on the show, I have the pleasure to interview Ben Hollander. Hollander.
You got it right.
I'm going to make sure I get it right.
First take.
So Ben is a sports and performance coach at the Spot Athletics from Columbus, Ohio. I've been following Ben for a while. I've been following the Spot Athletics for a few years now. And the reason why I asked Ben on the show is anything I see in the social media in regards to development of young athletes, youths, whether it's in sports or not sports, it seems to be just hitting the nail on the head. And I just generally wanted to have a chat with him. So I reached out, and Ben, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Stephen. I really appreciate you having me on. Appreciate you taking an interest in the content I've been putting out. And I've been, as soon as you messaged me, I was very excited to be on.
No, it's brilliant, and I do appreciate it. And even like I noticed that I was on one of your posts the other day. You were playing the ball game. We do cones, like hands on your hips, your knees, and it gets highly competitive. And just the fact that you incorporate games into what the youths do. But like for you, so how did you get into coaching? Like personal training, strength conditioning, but then more importantly for kind of what I have you on the show for is how did you kind of then end up working with youths?
Sure. So similar to a lot of people, I believe I've always been involved with athletics. I've always been involved with fitness and exercise and training. I started weightlifting at an early age. I always loved training, but the more knowledgeable and more experience I got with my own training, over time, I would find myself in situations where people would approach me in the weight room or at the fitness club and ask me for advice, ask me for tips and all that stuff. And, it was flattering at first, but I realized I genuinely liked helping people with their own fitness. And I would say it got to the point where I felt like I was enjoying helping other people more than I was helping myself with my own training. And so that's kind of what really got me going back down the path of training, personal training and strength coaching, if you will. My path ultimately led me to Columbus, Ohio to work at the Spot Athletics. It's been, I'll be honest, it's been an absolute dream working there for the last 4 years, because it's allowed me to really work with the demographics that I truly love working with, like youth, teens, high school, getting ready for college and all that stuff.
Yeah. And that is again, for people that mightn't understand, it takes time to build up that knowledge. Obviously, you have to go study, you have to do college, and then over the years, you find out an awful lot through just implementation and practice. And I find that one of the things that I've noticed a lot from working with adults to working with youths is that the changes that youths go through, even down to the simplest one of growth spurts, are huge. And as I find that a lot of people that start in kind of youth sports or youth coaching, they kind of treat them like smaller adults and just expect them to do the job. Whereas you need to kind of understand that, firstly, mentally, they're not prepared. Physically, their body's changing. Guys are going through male puberty. Girls are going through female puberty. Like, there's a lot of balls in the air, and then you expect them to be elite to the point where I think as a coach, you have to have a lot more empathy for working with kids and teens. And for you, I suppose I'm alluding to, like, how did you find that transition of working? Did you just kind of naturally feel comfortable working with youths? Like personally, for me, when I started it, I just knew from day one is what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. So for me, I love working with kids. I always have loved working with kids. That interest has always been there. I love the energy that they bring at that age. And their enthusiasm and their optimism for life and all that stuff. It's wonderful to work with them. I would say so that was always natural for me.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the transition and I guess maybe the evolution, if you will, has been with me and understanding kind of like how to work with them and how to train them. And it kind of like what you were, referencing just a minute ago, just how they are not young adults. They're not small, pro or college athletes or even high school athletes for that matter. And it took a lot of, it took experience and it took time to kind of realize that and understand that. And ultimately shift my approach of working with them and find, figure out really how I needed to approach them, from a training standpoint.
And then when you're working with, because like obviously you work with a lot of teams, and just kind of if you quickly, what sports are you currently working with? I know like as on your Instagram, there's tons of different groups you seem to be working with, but what kind of sports would be your main sports? But all in general, like how many different types of sports do you work with? Because each sport, I suppose, requires different programming based off obviously their muscles and what they're required to do on the field or on the court.
Sure. So at least at the moment, I work with hockey teams, soccer teams, lacrosse, and even a couple of volleyball clubs. So and over the years, I've had experience working with other sports, but at the moment, those are the sports that I'm working with right now, both female and male teams. And that in itself presents, different approaches, different challenges as well. But yeah, and being able to work with that variety of different sports, it also makes it really enjoyable.
Yeah. And like here it's this very slow burner that kids who are playing sports could do with strength and conditioning. Like I think all sports should have. Well, here, like I suppose my point would be is that by the time you become a professional, if you make it that far, you will be giving a strength and conditioning coach. If you get to college at a high level, you'll be given a strength and like this in Ireland, in Europe.
Yep.
I know in America in high school it's more prevalent. So I don't understand why, if we know it works, why aren't we doing it across all sports at even a younger age? Because like what for you, how important is strength and conditioning or performance training for kids that play sports?
Hugely important. It is, in my mind, it is so important that you can never make people train, but like I believe like it's approaching, the need of like, it should almost be required.
Yeah.
Almost. And I don't even mean like they have to necessarily be working with weights. They can be doing, you don't have to be working with weights to be, engaging and participating in a strength and conditioning program. You can get a great ton of benefit out of just doing body weight strength work, especially for the youths and the beginning athletes. But it's just huge. And even if the athlete is not participating in a non-contact sport, it can have a huge benefit as far as just, as I'm sure just non-contact injuries and just being healthy and staying safe. So I believe it's really, really important. And I think it is, at least out here in the US, I think it has gotten a lot better over the years. It's certainly a lot better than how it used to be. But, I think we also have a ways to go out here as well.
Yes.
So.
Well, I do. I think like, because every sport, no matter what sport, like I know, like you work with, like you say, you work with hockey. I know that the girls I've worked with from hockey, most of them we generally get kids in who are like big into their sport when they're injured. I get a mention when they're injured. So I get anyone from hockey. It's generally I've got a bad knee and I've got bad hips and I've got bad lower back. I'm like, yeah, basketball players, I've got bad shoulders, I've got bad hips, got bad knees. Rugby players, soccer players, no like ridiculously weak hamstrings compared to their quads. And you're kind of going like, every sport is an overuse injury waiting to happen if it's not maintained. And like you said, like the basics of bodyweight training, extra mobility work, even so, like again, what you guys are really, really good at, like reaction drill training, all that kind of speed, agility, quickness, which doesn't take doesn't take extra equipment. I know it takes some, but it doesn't take an awful lot to help a kid develop and become like bulletproof, I suppose, to a point, unless it's a collision sport where it doesn't matter how bulletproof you are. If you get hit wrong, you get hit wrong.
There's always going to be that risk.
Yeah.
Sure. Yep.
But like, even on top of that, where like, for I'd say 90% of our program, most of our kids, 80 to 90% of our program, say most of our kids, not teens, don't play sports. And they're with us because they don't have either the coordination or just they never took to a sport naturally because it just didn't suit them. Do you have guys do you have programs at Spot Athletics where you're just working with kind of general public and just helping kids become more aware of themselves and stronger in that aspect?
Sure. No, we definitely do have kids that would fall under kind of that category, as they're looking to develop physically, develop that coordination, develop that strength, and they don't at the moment participate in the sport. Sometimes eventually they, them training helps guide them towards the sport because they like the training and they like the culture and they like the environment of training and they want it to apply it to a sport. And sometimes they just call it good with the training and they that's all they need. At the moment at the Spot Athletics, in our small group training programs, we don't have a separate program for those types of individuals that are not participating in the sport, whether the teen or the youth is participating in a sport or not. They usually train together if they're participating in the small group training. But it's I would say it's hugely impactful for those kids, even though if they're not playing sports. It's huge for not just their physical development, but I would say it goes even further and it helps them develop their confidence.
Yeah, I think that's like building confidence and leaving the competence through movement will build our confidence. And we've had it where we've had some kids that like haven't excelled. One girl in particular, she's been with us 7 years. She was not big into uncoordinated. It wasn't natural to her. She had to really work hard. And she's with us 7 years. After 4 years, she started playing hockey. Wow. And as her mom says, she's just wiry. She's all over the place, but she loves playing hockey. But you couldn't get her on the hockey pitch 2 years earlier or 3 years earlier because her confidence wasn't there. But her confidence in herself that she knows, listen, I can do A, B, and C in the gym, so I can definitely do that out there. And I like that transition. I think is used because I think when a lot of kids go to sport. Like my son started off in Irish sport, GAA, Gaelic football, and hurling. And as much as I want him to play it, he's just not into it. Now he's kind of looking at rugby and basketball, and I'd love him to play basketball. That was my sport growing up. But again, I suppose kids need to kind of be given an awful lot more opportunity in sport. But also, my son does he does gymnastics. He's 6 now, so he's allowed to attend our junior kids program here, which he's learning. I don't coach him because I don't think dad should coach his kid. There's going to be problems.
Yeah, worms right there.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I think that's an absolute big thing in regards to just letting kids kind of figure it out and giving them the time. Sorry, my point being is that I suppose in a lot of sports where there's so many kids involved at the beginning, a coach, and 9 times out of 10, that coach is a voluntary coach. They don't have the time or the expertise to work specifically with an uncoordinated kid, and they'll lean more naturally to the gifted kids because they're easier to work with.
Easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find that that's definitely something to be true. And as much as you'd like to kind of educate the world on how it could be done better, if you're doing the job for free and you've got 60 kids every weekend to try and deal with, and there's the one kid that doesn't really want to do much because they just don't get it yet. You can understand from that point of view, but the fact that the likes of strength and conditioning or physical exercise is something that kids can enjoy. And I think all kids should be shown. I think there's something in every child or teen where you can show them as a strength coach how strong they are at something, whether it's you got the kid who can do loads of pull-ups and push-ups, right? You can show them. Then you got maybe a big kid who can't do bodyweight stuff, but could pick up a heavy kettlebell and walk really well with it, or a loaded carry. And you could show them that they're super strong there. And I think one of the things I used to always say to, especially kind of bigger kids that we'd get in, is if you give me a year, I'll make you the strongest kid in your school. And that was the buy-in every time. And if you put a year in, you'll be the strongest kid in school. And they were like, yeah, I'm in. Now they still won't be able to. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because every kid has a win and every kid has a strength. And I think as a coach, well, for me and what we do here, it's especially with kids that don't naturally take the sport, our job is to find their strength and be willing to put the time and effort into because they're going to have probably more bad days than good days if they're not naturally gifted to excel in. And I'm sure you've seen that with
it's going to take time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the other thing, I suppose, kids have so much time. It's not like they've got 2 years before they go pro. They've so much time to develop that you don't need to. And I suppose that leads me on to sports, overtraining. And I'm sure you've seen it where for example, I've 2 girls that at one point were training for 3 different teams for basketball. They were doing camps, did no off season. And they were starting to build up the niggles, the injuries. So how would you approach an athlete like that who's just literally burning themselves out, but it's kind of this is what they have to do if they want to be the best? So where would you go? How would you approach that?
I'll be honest, that's an issue that I am dealing with currently.
Okay.
I have the athletes that come to mind right now. I have a contingent of very high level female soccer players. They're early high school. I'd say most of them are freshmen, some sophomores, but they're high level soccer players. They play for a high level club or soccer club in the area that competes on a national level. They're flying to other parts of the country to play in these showcases and all that stuff, and so they play their club season, which extends from fall all the way through the summer, almost, or maybe not fall, more like winter all the way through the summer. But then as soon as their club season ends, almost immediately a week later, their high school season starts, and so they're almost playing their sport year round.
Yeah,
and it's kind of like it's where it creates the problem of like where are we fitting in our physical development and our strength development and our speed development? How are we one helping where in the calendar year are we helping ourselves get stronger, faster, and making our bodies more resilient to hold up against the wear and tear of this year long effort, if you will.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm honestly, I don't have the answer for that right now. Me as a coach. And if if you or other coaches out there have some ideas, I'm all ears, but it's tricky because the club scene is where they're gonna probably get the most exposure to the college coaches that they want to eventually play for. But then at the same time, they really want to play for their high school teams too, and they want to have the high school experience, and almost in a way like playing high school ball is in some ways one of their few connections to the school that they go to, because they're like they have it's a lot of sacrifice playing on these high level club teams, because you don't get the social life that most high school athletes get. So it's different.
I see it. Like, I know, and this is something that was said to me before, and it's 100% true, and it's happened to me once, is that the last person to get hired is the coach, strength coach. First person to get fired is strength coach, because strength coach is too honest. I had a girl, like, all talents, and injury. She came to me with injuries. We worked on them, fixed one knee. Then she left, came back. But she was playing. There was no off season. There was no downtime. And actually, she stopped working with us because she was too busy and too injured. She couldn't come and train because of injury. And then she just stopped. And the last time I seen her, she was on crutches. She's no longer playing national. And I don't even know what she's doing now, but it was just one of those things, is that she had the option of scholarships, all of this stuff, but they just kept pushing her to play. And I'm like, who wins out of this? Like, the teenager doesn't. But it's a hard conversation to say, listen, I think your daughter might be doing too much. And then maybe, like, because every sport in the world has a season.
Yep. And
they have an on season, an off season. And then in the off season, they're not allowed to do an awful lot. Yeah. Then that's why there's a preseason, because it's the body needs to recover. And I just find that what happens, what we're seeing is kids are getting out of sport due to injury, which is horrendous, or mental burnout, which I've seen too. I've seen where kids have just quit sport because we had one guy really good at rugby. And he just one day he went, I can't do it anymore. It's too much pressure. I'm getting pressure too much. And his answer was, because I asked him, well, why was the big thing? And it was an incident that happened that it was the catalyst. But he goes, I play a sport to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I'm not enjoying it, so I don't want to play it. And I was like, that's a very valid reason. He goes, I'm not getting paid. If we're getting paid a lot of money, yeah, fair enough. But this is meant to be fun. He was 17 at the time, and he just quit sport, all sport.
Yep.
And you're like, man, that's because of the pressure.
It's unfortunate, and it happens a lot.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't think they're like, what's the answer? Like you say, like we know the realistic kind of, well, you need to probably do more balance in training. You need to take more time off.
Yeah,
you're not going to do it. because
Yeah.
you need to be seen, and you need to build your highlight reel and all these things. But I was talking to a guy, Coach Matt Lyle, who's a baseball coach, and he was like saying 1% of all athletes make it.
Yeah.
1% will get paid well. Everyone else is, he goes, not to be rude, but that's, you're never going to make it. And I had a friend of mine used to work for a team called Leinster in Ireland, one of Europe's biggest rugby teams. And he would say that the young guys that would come through was like, oh, I'm going to be the next big thing. And they'd be like, you're not. And they'd know straight away. And then I suppose the crazy thing that we've seen is that with these teenagers that were coming through, it was like, if you have an injury at 14, 15, 16, you're just a number, because they know there's a guy that's younger than you that's going to do the same job, if not better.
That's not injured yet.
Yeah, and because at the end of the day, sport eventually becomes the business of winning. Yep. And it's not about the player, it's about winning, and winning at all costs. And I think that's one of the things I don't like about sport, I suppose, the way they push kids that way, or teens in that direction. But at the same time, it's what makes sport, winning.
Yep.
And specialization. And you need specialization at a point. But what would be, I suppose, what would be your thought on kids doing more multi-sports?
I'm a huge fan of multi-sport athletes, for sure. Certainly all through the youth phase, teen phase. I mean, I understand the pressure, the push, and the need to specialize at some point. I think that eventually we all do. I think the later you're able to put that off, I feel the later you can put off specialization, the better.
Yeah,
in my opinion. I think that playing multi-sports, it's not going to help you have a better all-around rounded athletic experience, but I'm in the group that believes that being a multi-sport athlete is ultimately going to help you be better in the sport that you ultimately do specialize in.
Yeah.
You're going to develop a lot of different skills that you might not develop in your chosen sport. I think you're going to give your body exposure to multitude of different other things, movements, energy system demands that maybe your chosen sport might not give you exposure to. And it's going to, I think having that more well-rounded experience is going to help you mitigate any chance of overuse training, burnout, anything like that. So I think being a multi-sport athlete is a great thing, and I always encourage my athletes to kind of go that route as long as they can, because eventually they will have to, if they take it far enough, like they will have to eventually. Yeah. So do it while you can, because eventually it's good. If you go long enough, you will get to the point where you gotta give your final rose to one. Yeah. And
that's normal. Like everyone falls into, like, for me, I grew up in a soccer family, or we'd call it football family. I never really liked football. I found basketball when I went to, like, what you'd say high school or secondary school, and you could not get me off a basketball court. That was my sport. Shy under 6 foot, can't jump. Not really ever going to make the NBA, but like, it was my sport, and I love to play. And I did the injuries to prove what the sport can do to youths. But
sure, yeah,
I do think that at a point you would have to pick a sport, and specialization does come eventually. It's an eventuality. But I suppose when you're working with any of your guys, and like, have you ever had to have the conversation with an athlete or a youth in regards to, right, you're you're doing this, you're doing 2 or 3 different sports, and they're not sure where to go, and they're kind of looking to you for advice. Have you ever had to kind of have those kind of sit down chats? I've had it once. I've only had it once so far in my working with youths. It was not a fun one.
Oh no. I've had 2 of those chats. Fortunately, they went okay. They weren't too. We didn't have to make any hard decisions in these first 2. They were both athletes that had they were choosing between sports. In this case, they were choosing between 2 sports that were occurring during the same season. And I asked, all right, which one are you better at? And they'd be like, oh, I'm better at sport A, you know. And I'm like, all right, well, which one do you like the best? Fortunately, sport A was also the answer. So that made it for a very easy decision.
Yeah.
It's obviously, choose the one that you like the best.
Yeah.
Choose the one that you're better at. And so that made for a kind of I think it was like they really liked the other sport, but like, the sport that they ultimately went with was the one that they were the best at. And so that made it easy. But, I believe that if the situation was a little different and they're like, oh, I'm best at this sport, but I really like this one the best. If honestly, if that is the conversation, and if I ever find myself in that type of situation where I'm talking to an athlete and I'm trying to help them decide, I honestly believe that I'm probably going to encourage them to go with the one that they like the best.
Yeah,
honestly.
Well, that was the situation I ended up in. Okay. I got asked by a mum, and the guy the kid was a swimmer. Yep. And he was winning. I think between 10, 11, 12 years of age, he was winning pretty much most things. And he also loved Gaelic football and hurling, and he was getting selected for the county, which would be the state team. And the timetable for swimming plus the timetable for Gaelic, because you had to play club and then you had to play county. He was starting to tire out and getting burnt out a little bit. And the problem is that he, between the age of 10, 11, 12, other kids start to grow. He wasn't. So when it was put to me, would you have a chat with him? The kind of conversation was, which one do you like more? And it was swimming was the one he liked because he had more fun with swimming. Even though it's an individual sport, he had more friends, more fun. And I'm like, well, you like... I'm going to be brutally honest with you, is that you're not going to be very tall. We just know this because of your growth spurts and how things are going. It's not a bad thing. It's just most swimmers will be 6'2" plus, if not more. Mm-hmm. So regardless of how good you are, you're eventually going to start losing because a guy will be taller than you. And I said, if you love swimming and you want to keep going at it, we'll figure it out and we'll work towards it. But I have to prepare you that these things could happen, or more than likely will happen. Because if you look at our 14-year-olds now versus him, they're all taller than him. And a lot taller. He's just going to be a shorter kind of guy. He still swims. He plays Gaelic more. He's kind of fallen into that and he loves it more, and he does it more now. But he made the right decision, but he uses swimming more as an outlet, I think, now. Okay. He swims and he enjoys it, but he understands where he is in regards to it. And it was a kind of a tricky one because I don't like to tell kids what they should do. I think all decisions should come from them. And advising him on what he should or shouldn't do, or any of them, or what they should and shouldn't do. I don't like being put in that position because I don't want to be the reason they regret it 2-3 years down the line. If you tell
want
me,
to come from them.
yeah, if you tell me that all you want to do is be a swimmer, then I'll go, right, let's be the swimmer. Like, let's go for it. But he made a different decision, and it was I suppose the first time doing it was weird, just to be kind of given a position where you can influence someone, and it could be positive or negative depending on your experience as a coach. I thought that was kind of cool. But your experiences, because obviously they picked the sport that they liked and were good at. I suppose that's the kind of ideal conversations you want to be having when you have to have those conversations, I think.
Now, if like I said, if the situation ever arises where it's the two don't line up, it's, I'm like I said, I'm a proponent of like doing what you believe you love to do.
Yeah.
I think it may be a harder road. And if it is a harder road, like, kind of like how you just described your conversation, like, and kind of laying out, hey, these are going to be the challenges and this is the adversity that you're going to experience having this type of body type, engage, going after this type of sport. These are the types you're going to be competing, going up against. And it will be a physical disadvantage. As long as you're okay with that, go for it. But, I think it's also good to kind of lay out like, hey, this is likely the road ahead.
Yeah.
Now, if you're still in, go for it. But,
yeah. And I again, I don't mind what you want to do. You want to be the best bowler in the world, or bowls, or swimmer, or climbing trees. I don't care. Like, there's a way I can help you. We'll help you be the best version of you for that sport. But I suppose, like, you working with so many different ages, and like obviously like males and females, do you guys, like, I suppose we do a bit of mindset work. Like, it's not mindset. We sit down and we have good conversations with the group just about like what their goals are, and then we ask a lot of questions in regards to what do you fear in regards to your sport, where do you want to be, how are you going to get there, what decisions will you make today to make that happen. And I know, like, on social media, like in the post, you say like getting the work done, but do you have those kind of, because I suppose I think it's more relevant now with all this COVID thing, that kids need more understanding of how to process, I suppose.
100%. Yeah, no, we definitely do a good deal of mindset work. Usually it occurs in the passing moments before the session begins, or at the end of the session when we have our athlete group huddle, and we go over, highlight of the workout, or something we noticed another athlete do well in that session. We kind of put the spotlight on somebody else. And then we talk about like goals, and that's going to change. Sometimes our goals are something that, what's our goal for our next workout? Sometimes our goal is like, what's our goal for the next week or that upcoming sports season? Unfortunately, you only have so many minutes with that athlete in that hour. And so it's kind of like, it would be amazing to kind of really deep dive into have more opportunity to deep dive into the mindset stuff, but wherever the opportunity is, we definitely try to help that and address that. That's definitely a thing. And like you said, with kind of like where the world has been in the last few years with COVID and just all the challenges that are facing everybody right now, like, these are things that are challenging adults. So, I can only imagine what these things feel like with youth who already, some of their biggest challenges are not feeling like they matter and not feeling like they're in control. And so when you throw in pandemic and all the things that go with a pandemic on top of it, like, it can only imagine what that is like. And it's no reason why, things like depression and, all the other unfortunate things that go, usually hand in hand with that are kind of huge epidemics right now with our youth. And no, mindset is huge. And, I, as a coach, I any chance I get, I try to like put a big emphasis on trying to, acknowledge that mindset is a thing, because a lot of athletes, especially the youth athletes, it's not always obvious that your mindset is something that you can control, that you have power over, and that's something that you can develop.
Oh yeah. In a big way. We, like, during the summer.
Oh, sorry.
During the summer, we do like teen camps, and at the start, the first session, we spend a half an hour talking about what's the outcome of the next 8 weeks. What are you looking to do? What are you willing to do to get in there? But even if, for example, today I actually went to watch, which is, I think it's the first time I've ever watched one, is a soccer match. My nephew was playing, and we're in the area, so we said we'd call in, and he got beaten 4-2, and he was not happy. And all the comments that I heard from the pitch and from just people talking to him were, oh yeah, well, were those kids older, and all looking like it was always the excuse. And I just went up to him when he finally finished. He wasn't in a good mood. I went up and he goes, how do you think you played today? I didn't play well. What do you think you can do better next time? Oh, I need to be more aware. What do you think? Where do you think your team fell short? I goes, if you played that team before, he goes, yeah. How'd it go? If we bet them 3-0. I said, so you lost 4-2, but you've bet them 3-0. You know you can beat them. So what went wrong? How can we look at it differently? He's like, well, I suppose like if the he said if the midfield spread it better, I think we could have got more balls through. I was like, do you think that's something you should say to your coaches and say to your team? And he was like, well, yeah. After that, he was back to being a 14-year-old. He was doing sprint races with the other kids, and I jumped in for 1 or 2, which is going to pay badly tomorrow. I know. But yeah, he.
So you got your hamstrings intact still.
Almost. Close. There's still a bark in this dog every now and again. But just having that quick conversation and just asking him how, getting him to process it in his own head.
Sure.
He was able to kind of go, okay, so like, oh yeah, I know what to do now. And then he can leave it and go on, which is really good. So obviously, Ben, we're into it. I don't want to take up too much of your time, because I think I could talk to pretty much most people about this stuff for hours.
All day.
All day. But I'll kind of leave on this one. And again, it's the one I've asked everyone. I like this one because most people say, what's your dream? What's your goal? I like to ask what someone's fear is. And I'll give, for my example would be, and I've said this in nearly every podcast I've done so far, is my goal is my biggest fear is not being the dad that I want to be to my son and my daughter. I have a new daughter. That'll be my cheers. She is a nightmare. She won't sleep. I'm exhausted. My wife's exhausted, but sure, she smiles at you, and then it's over. You're like, okay. And she learned to blow kisses. That's melting my heart. So she gets away with an awful lot, more than my son would.
Sure. Oh, I believe it.
Yeah. You have a daughter.
So my girlfriend has a 7-year-old daughter, and but she has me wrapped around her fingers. Yeah. Already. So it's, I feel like I get it.
Yes.
There's nothing I wouldn't do for her.
Yeah. So like, would you have, like, what would be your biggest fear in even work life, anything?
Sure. I guess there's two, for me right now at this point in my life, I would say there's two fears, and they're kind of the same thing, but they're the same thing, but for the two kind of main sides of areas of my life. And that's number one, not being the best partner for my girlfriend that I could possibly be and that she deserves, and the best male figure that I can possibly be for her 7-year-old daughter. They're kind of my world, and they provide the balance in my life opposite the extreme intensity that I put towards my coaching. And so they kind of balance me out, which in turn ultimately, they make me a better coach.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
I understand that.
Making sure that, making sure that I give them I'm able to be the absolute best for them.
Yeah.
And so I guess the fear is not being that. So I believe that I will be that. It's the fear that drives me to always be better and always critique myself and always kind of, that doesn't allow me to be satisfied with myself.
Yeah. And I again, one of the reasons why I ask those questions is because I find that when you ask those questions to yourself, you then realize, like the answer you gave, is that you won't be satisfied at just being okay. You're always going to strive to be better because you're doing it for other people. And I think when you're doing, you should always do stuff for yourself. But I think when you have that catalyst of another person in your life or people in your life, you will go the extra mile. You will sacrifice where needed, and you will be better. And then you are able to give them what you feel they need in life, which I think is a really good thing for me, especially with my kids. And I always say the kids and my wife as well. I tend to leave her out quite a bit. She doesn't listen to my podcast, so she never. She might listen to this one. I'll get it when I go home. But Ben, firstly, thanks.
Sorry, the other.
Oh, sorry, the other one. Yeah,
I left out the other thing. The other thing was not being the the best coach that I can possibly be for my athletes, and the best teammate that I can be for the amazing coaching staff that I'm a part of at Spot Athletics. So that's the other half. That's the other half to the yin and the yang for me. It's like the fear that if I'm afraid of something, those are the things that I would be afraid of, and those are kind of like the driving forces.
Yeah.
So there's the home side of it, and then there's the
work. Yeah. And like I say, I think it's a necessary thing because everyone has goals and dreams and aspirations, but I think that is the driving force behind it, especially for me, is a bigger factor of I want to live up to what I want my son and daughter to have, this type of father, and I want my youths and my again the guys in the gym, it'd be very similar to yours, to only ever have the best of what I can offer when I do it. But hitting the nail on the head. I think they're really, really good ones. But for anyone, obviously, I'll put if you're okay with it, I'll put your Instagram handle in the comments below. So if anyone wants to check you out, check out what you're doing, maybe give you a follow. But Ben, first, again, thanks for jumping on the show. You'll be episode 38. I think it'll be going out in 3 weeks. And for anyone listening to the show who's interested in wanting to become a youth coach or work with youths and athletes, definitely check out Ben's Instagram. He's got tons of like really cool content on there, and it's showing you what he does best. And again, it's we need more coaches to have that type of mindset and empathy to help as many youths as possible, to give them again a better outlook on their sport, a better outlook on their life. And then if you are listening to this podcast, don't forget to give me a like and subscribe, follow, a positive comment. If you have any questions about working with youths, again, put them in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer anything that you have. And Ben, again, thank you very much. And we'll see you all on the next episode.
Trust me, every time my alarm goes off.
Depends on the sport a little bit, but
I need to worry they're bad at what I teach.
I'm so excited to hit this workout.
I'm so glad my parents never let me.
You're listening to the Live, Play podcast.